One.
Hi everyone, I'm Deanna Kosaraju. I'm the CEO and founder of Global Tech Women. Welcome to today's presentation of Women Talk Tech. Women Talk Tech is a free webinar series that we offer twice each month to technical women around the world, and we bring in technical women to talk about cool technology, and we also bring in women who are doing great things for technical women and bringing topics of interest to the technical women's community. So thank you very much for attending today. I would like to first start with a couple of housekeeping items. Number one, if you want to see this presentation, there's a full screen button up on the top right-hand side. Please click that and our presentation will then be full screen. We also have a chat window. That's how we can communicate with the people who are attending this session. So when you're ready to ask a question or if you want to make a comment, feel free to take yourself out of full screen and then you will see a chat window there and we can go ahead and answer your questions as we go through the presentation. This session is being recorded and it will be available next week on our YouTube channel. So I will send out, if you did register for this event, I will make sure that you have a link so that you can send it to other people and watch it again. I enjoy watching these presentations. So with that, I would like to introduce you to Jo Miller. Jo Miller and I have worked together for a number of years now. She is an inspiring speaker and someone who is very popular in the technical women's community. If you haven't heard her speak, this is a great opportunity for you. Jo Miller is the CEO of Women's Leadership Coaching, and I'll let her talk a little bit about herself because I love to hear her wonderful accent, and she can do a much better job than I, but I will say that I enjoy listening to Jo speak, and I've really enjoyed working with her all of these years, and so I'm very excited to welcome her to Women Talk Tech with Global Tech Women. So with that, Jo, I'll hand it over to you.
Terrific. Deanna, thanks for the wonderful introduction. Hi, everyone, and welcome to our Tech Talk today. And I just want to say what a pleasure it is to be working with Deanna. We've collaborated on so many different projects over the years, but it's great to see her really taking this leap and bringing her new mission to the world through the Global Tech Women organization. Just briefly, a little more about me. You know, and as soon as I open my mouth and start speaking, people always have a question about my accent. So in addition to currently living in Cedar Rapids in Iowa, a bit about my background is I grew up in Australia and I lived in California in Silicon Valley for 10 years. So the accent you hear today is Australifornian. You like that? Maybe soon to become Australifornia Iowan, we shall see. So wherever you're joining from today, welcome, and I hope you enjoy the program that we have in store. Before I dive in on the topic, I wanted to give Deanna the opportunity just to briefly say a few more words about her organization, Global Tech Women. Deanna, do you see my slide there on your screen?
I do. Thank you, Jo. So as I mentioned at the beginning, you know, this is a brand new organization, Global Tech Women, and our mission is really to create a global network of inspired, connected, and self-actualized technical women. And what do I mean by that? I mean that, you know, technical women have different goals and objectives at different times in their lives, and they are much more complex than just the technology angle. And so, you know, Global Tech Women is really about finding solutions and finding resources for technical women at all levels in all regions of the world. And also, we want to bring you content and resources from a variety of different partners, a variety of different organizations, and places around the world, because I think the technical women's community now is global. Some of the solutions that are being suggested around the world are relevant to you in your own backyard, and so we're hoping to create a dialogue of technical women around the world to figure out ways that we can increase the numbers of technical women, we can keep the women that are already there, and figure out ways that they can advance in their goals and objectives, whatever those objectives may be. So that's kind of our mission. And we do that through three things. One is through this webinar series. The second is through this Voices Conference, which we have coming up on March the 8th, 2013. And registration will be open next week. If you're interested in hearing about Voices, you can go to our website, globaltechwomen.com, and please register for our newsletter. I think you will find the topics very interesting. Joe Miller will be speaking at that event as well, and the registration is only $20. So you'll get 30 hours of great content for $20, and all of these sessions will be recorded. You'll be able to hear from women around the globe. Very exciting. And the last one is we're working on an open source platform to figure out ways that we can connect women and their goals to the resources in the community who's going to help them achieve those goals. And I'll talk about that platform as we go through this year, but it's very exciting. We're writing this in open source and designing it in open source, and we're hoping that the technical women's community will help us design and implement it, because who better to design and implement the platform than the women who are actually going to use it. So one thing about this session, our hashtag for the Women Talk Tech webinar is the hashtag Women Talk Tech, and Joe has graciously put up our Twitter identification, so you can go ahead and tweet whatever is meaningful to you, and we would love to hear your feedback. So Joe, back to you.
Absolutely, would love to do. Well, great, everyone. By the way, a couple of years ago, I was participating in an online discussion amongst a whole bunch of speakers and presenters, and they were complaining about how people kept tweeting and blogging and Facebooking during their speaker presentations. And this group as a whole decided that from now on, they were going to ask their audiences to refrain from blogging and tweeting and please give the speaker their full attention. So I just want to categorically state from the outset that anyone who is caught blogging or tweeting during this session will absolutely be invited back again next time. So go for it. And with that, I want to launch today's presentation with a concept that really forms the foundation of just about every workshop or presentation or webinar that I deliver. And it's about the most common roadblock that we face as women when it comes to advancing our professional careers. And so after many years of speaking with women and talking about the different roadblocks and challenges that they face in their career advancement, I've really come to believe it's this one, the emerging leaders quandary. And this is a roadblock or a barrier that you've probably come up against once, if not multiple times in your career. But the interesting thing is it comes up at a time when you'd least expect it, because you're doing great and you are more than fulfilling all the requirements of your job description and role, and you're going above and beyond to deliver. And so you're really kicking butt. And yet, for some reason, you just can't seem to get recognized as someone who's ready to go to that next level, to take on a bigger, more responsible role, or expand your sphere of influence, or even get that promotion that you'd like to go after. And it's because you've come up against this barrier. Here's what it is. It's when you can't get that higher level job without leadership experience. But of course, as everyone knows, it's really hard to get the leadership experience without the job. And so the great roadblock or barrier that we need to move beyond it many times in our career is, how does a person break out and establish themselves as an up-and-coming leader in their profession or in their organization? And how do you demonstrate that there's more to you than the job you're in today, but without waiting for someone to come hand you that opportunity, or without waiting for someone to come tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, this is your moment, you get to be a leader now? Because of course, if your career plan is to wait for someone to come hand you those things, you might actually need to wait a rather long time. So you really can't afford to wait for someone to come invite you in to be a leader or grant you permission to take a seat at the table. And you sure as heck can't afford to wait for someone to come promote you. What you really need to do is be someone who's taking charge of your own career trajectory. And of course, that's the topic for today. Now, I know that you probably already have a career development plan, but I'm about to explain why that's not nearly enough. And so the problem with having a career development plan is it almost always relates to the job that you're in today. And it's probably something that you've sat down with your manager or your mentor to discuss what your goals are for your own self-improvement and professional development, and worked together with people inside of your organization to talk about what there is for you to skill up and improve on and work on next. That's a career development plan. And yet what it doesn't take into account is that you may have aspirations that go far beyond the job that you're in today. So it doesn't take into account that you may have far greater potential than the job that you're in today. So I'm going to encourage everyone to think about certainly having your career development plan that's a part of your current role, but really think about moving beyond that and doing something that no one else is going to do for you, but take charge of your own career advancement by creating a career advancement plan for yourself. And today's webinar is to break down 5 pieces that I really see as being essential elements of a good career development plan. Sorry, I fell right into that trap myself. A good career advancement plan. By the way, at a conference a couple of years ago, I was very lucky to see Carol Bartz speak, and as you know, she's the former CEO of Yahoo, and here's how she put it. She has a way of putting these things very bluntly, but she said, no one cares about your career but you and your mom. So, you know, the sad news here is when it comes to your career advancement and taking charge of your career trajectory and really taking ownership of where you go from here, you can't rely on your manager or your HR partner or your training department or your mentor to take ownership of that for you. It really is up to you. So you've got to take charge of this and drive it for yourself. So in today's webinar, I've really taken a look back over some of the concepts that I've been talking about and teaching and reading about over the past 18 months, and pulled together 5 that I really think are essential as we kick off the new year here. You know, we're almost a month into 2013, but now really is an ideal time to think about where you steer your career in the year going forward. So here are 5 key points that I think you might really like to take into account and include as a part of a robust career advancement plan for yourself. By the way, as I go, it would be great to hear your comments, your questions, your input as I'm talking through these 5 key elements. I am going to reserve some time for questions at the end, so apologize in advance if I don't get to everyone's comments as we're going through, but feel free if a thought strikes you, open up the chat box, type in a note to myself, let me know how these ideas are resonating for you, let me know if you have any questions. We'll probably keep those to the end, but do keep that chat bar open and interact and let me know your thoughts. And even, if you've tried some of these things and how it's been applying those for yourself. All right, so 5 elements of a robust career advancement plan so that you can take ownership of your career trajectory and not wait for someone to come hand you that next opportunity, but be in the driver's seat in your career. So you'll notice something. You notice I'm going to start at number 5 and count down, and there's a reason for that. So a few years ago, I was working with a writing coach, just working on polishing up my written communication. And my writing coach, Tony, told me, Joe, if you can start at the high number and work back down to 1, it builds a sense of drama and anticipation. So I hope you can feel it. I hope you can feel the drama and anticipation, because coming in at number 5 on the list is know your niche, know your ideal career niche. Which really is a way of answering that question that I think we all ask ourselves so often: what do I want to be when I grow up? So, what is that ideal best fit career niche, your sweet spot in your career? And the reason I start with this one is because if you can steer yourself into a career where you're doing something you really enjoy, where you feel valued, where you get to make a difference, then you'll be so much more successful in the longer term than if you just start from where you're at today. So I really encourage, if you don't already know what your ideal best fit career niche is, think about this model I'm about to show you in 2 more slides time, and really encourage you to spend some time thinking about this, writing about it, meditating on it, if you're not already clear what this looks like for you, because this might be one of the hardest concepts that I cover today, but it's the one that can really make the greatest difference over time to where you ultimately end up in your career. It can really create a turning point in that trajectory for you. So I was speaking with a very senior level woman a few years ago, interviewing her for a webinar for a technical women's organization, and she said early on in her career, a mentor gave her this advice and said, be famous for something and know what is your claim to fame. And at that time, early on in her career, she was one of the most junior level, brand new graduates in a big consulting firm. And she'd thought about building a whole range of strengths and abilities as a way to advance herself. But her mentor said, no, pick that one that you know you can be great at, that will become your claim to fame. And so thinking about that, she realized that what she was really good at was building great customer relationships. And so instead of building a whole variety of skills and strengths, she really focused on building on that one special strength, her ability to build great rapport with her customers, and actually built it into what now is claim to fame, her ability to close the really big sales deals. And so focusing intently on that particular niche, that strength, took her all the way from brand new graduate to partner in that consulting firm, and now onto her role heading up a big business division of a Silicon Valley software company. So there really are three essential elements to think about when you want to discover what your ideal best fit career niche is. Think about this as narrowing in on your sweet spot in your career. So identifying your sweet spot comes about when you firstly recognize what your passions are. So, you know, what are the things that you're just passionate about in your professional life? The things that you just can't wait to come to work every day and work on those particular tasks or projects. The things that when you're doing those, you're so immersed and so in the flow that you just lose track of time. You're so in the zone. Those are your passions. That's the first piece. Now, you'll see the second bubble there talks about what are your skills and talents, the things that you're naturally good at, or the things that you could become very good at if you were to focus very intently on building that strength. Now, figuring out your ideal niche in your career, of course, starts with knowing your passions and knowing your talents, you know, what you bring to the table that you're very good at, that you could potentially become world-class at. But if you don't include the third bubble, you might not end up in a thriving and sustainable and successful career. You might end up with an expensive hobby, not a career path. And the third and most important piece here, especially at a time like this when, you know, when we're going through some economic turmoil and climbing out of recession, the third piece is to understand what is it that your company or your industry as a whole needs and wants and values so greatly that if you were to deliver that service to them, you would be sought after, you'd be highly valued in your career. Now, the challenge being in tech is that green circle, that can be somewhat of a moving target. So you need to stay up to date on, you know, trends, developments, what's going on in your industry, and be a bit of a futurist, be a bit of a visionary to be able to continually map to what it is that your organization needs from you. But the idea here is to figure out what is an activity or a role that you could base a career about, where you're doing something that you're passionate about, that you're also very good at, you're skilled and talented at, that is really needed and valued by your organization. And by the way, I'll give you a place to download a set of slides, the PowerPoint slides, when we're done, if you'd like to take a copy away. And just hearing from a few people now, Marta certainly shared that, you know, she sees a lot of room for herself to grow and just not sure what direction to go in. So for Marta and others like you, I really encourage you to take on the exercise of drawing that Venn diagram with the three bubbles. Maybe brainstorming a list of the things that you're passionate about and skilled at that could map to an area that your industry really needs and values. And so if this seems like something that you need to figure out at this point in your career, I really encourage you in coming days or weeks or months to take on this exercise of really identifying what is that ideal career niche. And what does that look like for you at this point in your career? And by the way, if there's anyone listening in who's clear on that or thinks you might be clear, we would love to hear from you. So just go to the chat box and type a note to me, and I'll certainly share with you any that I see coming through. But right now it looks like you're all thinking on it, which is certainly a good thing. So the first of our 5 elements of a robust career advancement plan, of course, is to know that ideal career niche, your sweet spot in your career, and start to maneuver into a place where you can do more of that every day as part of your role. Now, counting down the list now to number 4, Number 4 is to build a scalable brand. Build a scalable brand. Now, I know there's been a lot of talk the last few years about building a brand, but here's the challenge with that. I've spoken with women from time to time who've built a terrific brand for themselves, and they're widely known for being great at what they do. And yet it hasn't led them toward advancement because they've worked their way into a brand that's something of a cul-de-sac. There's nowhere for it to go from here. They're in a dead-end brand. So in this next piece, I'm going to talk about not only how to brand yourself well, so take that ideal niche and come up with a catchphrase and a way to communicate it effectively and compellingly to others, but also to ensure that this is a brand that can scale up and grow with you and not limit you in your career. So again, step number 4 here is to build that scalable brand. And a couple years ago at a women's leadership conference, I saw Dr. Rohini Anand speak, and she said, be authentic about your own leadership style. Don't try and change it, but own it and communicate it. Put a brand on it and put a value on it. And what she's really referring to here is, when you go out to build a brand for yourself in your career, don't try and twist yourself into a pretzel and become something that's not really you. Rather, be authentic about what your strengths and talents are and the value that you bring, and communicate that and brand it to others. So starting with that ideal career niche that I just spoke about, I'm going to share some ways to come up with a phrase that communicates it very succinctly, but you want to start from that ideal niche and build from there. Don't try and create a brand that's not really you. So on this next slide, I'm going to share one of my favorite stories about a woman who went through this branding process and where she ended up as a result. And so at the time, she was an analyst, a junior level analyst in a big well-known internet company. Actually was the last person hired into her team before an 18-month hiring freeze. And so for all of that time, she was sort of seen as the junior on the team. And in her own words, she said, I was low man on the totem pole. Now, what that meant was that she had a job that involved some very routine, day-to-day analysis of data that was critically important to the functioning of this big company. But her job never gave her an opportunity to show that she was capable of so much more. So she kind of got locked into this fairly entry-level role. Now, being a very highly motivated, up-and-coming emerging leader, she quickly found ways to get her job done easily and was able to free up some time to take on some stretch assignments. So she would go around to the senior managers in the team and say, hey, do you have anything I can help out with? And quickly attracted all of the little low-priority tasks that none of the senior managers on the team could be, bothered to take on. So when I said to her, it might be time for you to rebrand yourself. What brand are you currently known for? She said, oh, I'm known as the pooper scooper. She said, I'm the only one. I'm the only one here who's willing to, roll up their sleeves and get their hands dirty, dive in, and deal with all these little messes that the more senior level managers on the team don't want to deal with. So yeah, my brand is I'm the pooper scooper. So clearly, she'd built a great reputation as being a very valuable team contributor, team player, and yet that brand was one of those cul-de-sacs I mentioned earlier. It was placing a limit on where she could go in her career. So she needed to take that brand and everything that was good about what she was known for and just scale it up to more of a leadership brand. So here's what she came up with. It was to be known as the change agent. Do you like that? Certainly an improvement on being the pooper scooper. So she started to very diplomatically push back on some of the lower level assignments that were taking up all her time. And in the time that she freed up, worked with her manager to identify just a handful of really well-chosen stretch assignments that demonstrated that she was capable of so much more than her role. And she quickly became known as a change agent, someone you bring in to deal with those more sophisticated business issues, and actually got promoted as a result not long after, and now is able to pay it forward to other up-and-comers on the team and help them rebrand and scale up their brand to more of a leadership brand. So the next example I have, just a quick one, a more senior level person, like I know that some of you who are listening in are a bit more senior in your career. This woman was a director of programs with a big telecommunications firm that she'd worked with for over 10 years and had built a great reputation for herself. But her brand, her reputation was being the jack of all trades and master of none. And I won't list every department in the company that she'd worked in, but it had been almost all of them that she'd revolved through over time. And so her challenge was that she wasn't going to advance to her next level, which was to ultimately become a senior director and then possibly a vice president one day. That wasn't going to happen unless she was really known for owning an area or a department. And so she needed to figure out what that was. Through all of this career ADD that she called it, she needed to pull out a common thread and figure out how she could scale that up to a more senior executive level brand. So we got to talking, and it occurred to me that she just loved talking about business strategy and company strategy, and all the books on her bookshelf were all strategy books. So I remember suggesting to her, what if you positioned yourself and branded yourself here as the go-to person for corporate strategy? And she liked that and started to introduce herself in that way and said, think of me as your go-to for any strategy conversations. She started to be called into the room whenever someone had a strategy conversation going on, and she'd find her way to the whiteboard and facilitate. And so when she and I last spoke, she was working with the CEO of the company to come up with a proposal to possibly create an office of strategy, a dedicated department. And she told the CEO, hey, I think I know the ideal person to head that up. So as you'll see, these two people are examples of people who, had established themselves with a certain brand or reputation, but needed to tweak it and evolve it to one that could really scale well with them in their career. Now, you probably already have a brand. We already have a reputation, but most of the time it takes place by default, not by design. And so people have put a brand on you in that they perceive you a certain way, but you really owe it to yourself to take ownership of that and create a brand that is of your own design, and also one that's going to scale up and evolve with you when you're ready to advance in your career. And I'll credit Krista Thomas, who's a VP of marketing with a startup fan apps in Southern California. She coined the phrase. She said, make your brand scalable. Now, I hope you can see what's on this slide. Those of you watching the recording might not be able to pick it out, so I'll briefly read through each of the bullet points. But it's this idea that your brand really needs to evolve and scale up at certain key points in your career, or else it might be one of those cul-de-sac brands, one that places a lid on you and holds you back from advancement. So early on in your career, we all know to come into the workforce in our very first job and quickly establish a reputation as being a valuable contributor and a good team player, maybe a specialist at what we do, or a go-to person, or that entry-level subject matter expert, starting to build that subject matter expertise. However, if you're still known as some of these entry-level brands after, say, 3 or 4 years into your career, notice how it might be holding you back from going to your next level, of building more of a mid-level brand. So just notice if it's your turn now to scale up that brand in order to attract your next level assignment in your career. So examples of mid-level brands, a bit like I mentioned earlier, the strategist or the innovator or the change agent, or perhaps your thing is motivating others, so people motivator or team leader or project leader. See how these are just a step up from the entry-level brands, but absolutely the type of brand you want to establish yourself after your first few years, or you might end up with a brand that's actually holding you back from advancement. So just notice for yourself right now if it's time for you to take on a brand that's more of a mid-level brand, and if so, you might just want to write down some words or phrases that conjure it up for you. And by the way, the best brand will articulate that ideal career niche, just to complicate things for you. Now, for some of you, you're well established at mid-level, and now it's time for you to build a more senior level brand. And some examples that I've heard from senior level women in the past are, to be known as the visionary, or the leader who develops other leaders around, and that's really my personal favorite. or a charismatic leader. You know, they're more rare. We don't find as many of them, but they certainly exist. Maybe you've worked with one. And then another of my favorites, the quiet leader. You know, the wise sage who sits in the room and doesn't say a lot, but boy, when they do speak, you really want to listen because there's such wisdom coming forth. Now, in any case, there is one key component that all people, but women especially, who break into those senior level positions have in common, and it's that at some point they've developed a brand for delivering bottom line results to their organization. So just know that if you aspire to reach the upper echelons of executive leadership, you do have to incorporate a track record of delivering results and have that as a piece of your brand along the way. So do just notice if any of those phrases on the page ring true for you, or at this time, you know, feel free to start to write out your own, but see if you can come up with a very short, succinct sentence or just a handful of words that clearly articulates the brand that you want to be known for, it, and make sure it's just a bit of a stretch for you. It helps you evolve into your next level role. And just as an aside, some questions you could ask yourself to get that evolution, that scaling up going on, things like, you know, where do I want to be 2 years from today or 5 years from today? And when you have that thought in mind, think about, okay, what brand do I need to build now, say in the next 6 months to 1 year? What do I need to be known for now in order to get to where I most want to be? And as part of that process, if you found this section on branding valuable, I do really encourage you to take a little time out in the next week or so, see if you can write out that personal brand statement. And if you already know it, or even if you're 60 to 75% there, go ahead and type it into the chat bar, and I'll share any of those that we see coming by. I know some people are typing. Hopefully we see a few of those pop up. It would be great to hear from some of you. By the way, mine is women's leadership coach. That's probably pretty clear. But many, many years ago when I was first starting out, I really wasn't clear about that at all. And my coach, Megan, took me through an exercise really similar to this one, where she made me write out 100 different things that I would love to do, that I'd be passionate about, that I thought others could value. Helped me narrow it down to, the top 3 things, and I still didn't know what it was until Megan said to me, "Jo, when you talk about women in leadership and coaching, you just sound 10 times more excited than anything else." So that was my feedback from her that helped me narrow in on my own brand. Now, Saripa, I hope I pronounced her name correctly, but thanks so much for sharing yours. She's known as the data visualization expert. Isn't that great? Great brand. Thanks for sharing that, by the way. And ladies, I'm just going to pause a moment and scroll back and see if we had any others come in. We just have a few people saying, who am I? So clearly thinking about that, but definitely data visualization expert is a wonderful one. And then Hebo has said that it's hard to brand oneself, but if I were to go with one off the top of my head, I'm a people connector. And Hebo, you're probably being a little modest and self-facing when you say that, but if that's exactly what comes to mind, I would say you are probably, you're very likely to be known as that among everyone who's had the pleasure of working with you. So the people connector is another one. And someone else, I can't quite see your name here. Let me scroll up and see. Sorry, I don't see. Oh, it's Anne. Oh, look, I'm going to read Anne's note here because it's wonderful. She said, "Years ago, when I was trying to come up with a title for myself, someone said I should use hired gun because I get things done." Do you like that? She's not sure if she likes the overtones of that, gun ballads and all of that stuff, but she said, "Not sure if I like the overtones," but she sure appreciated the compliment from others. And then someone else has said networking princesses, which is kind of cool as well. So thanks everyone who shared, and hopefully everyone else is really thinking on and starting to design what your brand might look like going forward. So counting down the list now, coming in at number 3, and given one of the stories that I just told, you might be a bit surprised to see this one up on your screen, but number 3 is called Say No to Stretch Assignments. Now, I know that stretching beyond your current role and taking on a different projects and assignments can be a great way to go forward in your career. But I've also seen it become a major pitfall for a lot of women. And so here's an actual note, an email that I received from a woman about a month after a workshop that she attended. And it really made me kind of laugh and also want to cry a little as well at the same time, because she said, you know, a mentor had told me to volunteer for stretch assignments as it would help me improve my career. I took on 3 new projects and now I'm not getting any sleep. Can you help me, please? Well, you know, you probably all know what the answer to that one is, but it speaks to this idea that stretch assignments aren't always the great leap forward that you want them to be, unless you choose them very carefully. So instead of taking on, you know, 2 or 3 or even more, I would say next time someone comes to you with a new, you know, project role or opportunity or assignment, even, you know, your possible next job, before you get excited and jump in and say yes, just pause a moment and step back and ask yourself, does this advance me along the trajectory that I want to move in my career? And so there's really 2 important things to look for. The first is, does it really showcase your brand and allow you to demonstrate the value in that brand, as well as show that you can deliver valuable results to the business? So 2 important things to look for. And if it doesn't, you may want to find a way to very diplomatically either decline, although it's not always politically possible or okay to do that, but perhaps say, okay, I'll take this on, I'll help out in this instance, but use that as a negotiating chip to get the exact assignment that you want next. And so here's some of the pitfalls to look for when someone comes to you with that next project or role or opportunity or assignment. Don't immediately volunteer and say yes if it's going to stretch you too thin. No one ever advanced their career by trying to be all things to all people. You end up being nothing to anyone. So don't do those ones that stretch you beyond what you know you can deliver well. And don't take on the things that, you know, they don't build the strengths that you want to be known for in your career. And also don't take on the ones that don't meaningfully expose you to an expanded network. So you do want to look for the types of roles and assignments and opportunities where you get to work side by side with the people that you want to include in your network, you know, possibly new mentors or different areas of the business that you might want to work more closely with one day. So look for that networking component as well. If it's people that you've already worked with, well, you know, they may know what you're great at and your capabilities already. You know, don't automatically take on assignments if you don't get to build the reputation that you want to be known for. So, for example, you know, there may be this awesome opportunity to be the greatest at something, but it doesn't fit the career trajectory that you're carving out for yourself. So you may just want to negotiate or diplomatically say no. And then finally, don't take on the types of assignments that don't give you an opportunity to make your value visible and showcase what you're great at, because you may deliver some phenomenal project or innovation or result that really benefits the business, but if you don't get your moment in the spotlight, well, you just kind of worked hard with no reward coming back for yourself. So make sure you get an opportunity to showcase it or present it or write about it in some way. You know, put together your PowerPoint deck of wins and take it on a tour around, call it a best practices tour, and take it out to other groups and to your leaders. So that when you're taking on these stretch assignments or any new project role or opportunity, it's helping you move in exactly the direction that you want to go in your career. So interested to hear if any of you have experiences with this, and if so, feel free to type a little note into the chat bar there. Let us know what your experience has been with not automatically volunteering or saying yes to every stretch assignment that comes along, but instead choosing very carefully the ones that are going to be a great brand builder and career advancer for you. Okay, ready for number 2 on the list? Here it comes. Number 2 is called to line up your sponsors. And I always knew it was a good idea to have mentors and sponsors, but it wasn't until I read this article in the Harvard Business Review that it really hit home for me what a critical piece this is in your career advancement plan. Now, note that the article title is called "Why Men Still Get More Promotions Than Women." Now, I hope that got your attention. Did that get your attention? It certainly got mine. And here's what the authors of the article and the study said. They said there's a special relationship called sponsorship, in which the mentor goes beyond giving feedback and advice and uses his or her influence with senior executives to advocate for the mentee. Our interviews and surveys alike suggest that high potential women are over-mentored and under-sponsored relative to their male peers, and for that reason, they're not advancing in their organizations. So quite a big thing to take on and consider, isn't it? Especially if you are a high potential woman. Just consider for a moment, are you one of those high potential women who has been over-mentored and yet under-sponsored? And if so, think about looking for sponsors, lining up sponsors. Now, I was interviewing Michelle Johnston Holthouse about a year ago. She's a GM with Intel, and she said, "Are all of your advocates in the management chain directly above you? I recommend that everyone have 3 to 4 advocates outside their direct management chain." Now, she calls them advocates. I like to call them sponsors, but it's certainly a question worth thinking about. Do you have upward and outward reaching sponsorship relationships throughout your organization? And if not, it might be time to line some up. Now, about a year ago, I interviewed Cindy Ken and one other vice president on the topic of sponsors, and I'm just sharing Cindy's definition of sponsors with you because I thought it was a really good one. So if you're wondering, what is a sponsor, what's the definition? Cindy said, a sponsor is someone who will use their own internal political and social capital to move your career forward within an organization. She said, behind closed doors, they will argue your case. So notice lining up sponsors is a way of having a voice in those closed door sessions where all of the career development and talent development decisions get made. There's someone in there championing your cause. And certainly Cindy is one who would tell you she wouldn't be where she is at today in her career if not for some sponsors who pulled them up along with her. So if you're wondering where to find them in your industry or in your organization, Cindy and the other woman that I interviewed, Amanda Martinez of Safeway, came up with this list. They said you want to make sure that it's a senior leader who has some influence. They have some credibility when it comes to those talent decisions that get made. So they're well respected and credible, but you want to make sure it's someone who has some exposure to you and is familiar with your strengths. So you want to find some ways of either working with them or for them, or having ways of showcasing your value so that they really get and understand the value and the strengths that you bring. And finally, don't waste your time pursuing sponsors that don't already have a solid track record of developing talent. And you probably know who those leaders are and aren't in your organization. So look for the people who've sponsored others. They probably take it upon themselves to be a good sponsor and a talent developer. And right now they may be looking out for someone just like you. So go make it a day. Now, when I was speaking with Cindy and Amanda on this webinar on sponsorship that we did a year ago, I remember asking them, ladies, sponsors are a great thing. How does a person go about getting a sponsor? And they both said, well, no, wait a second. You don't do that. You don't choose the sponsor has to choose you. But the trick is there are a number of behaviors that you can exhibit in order to make yourself available to sponsors. So how to kind of, put yourself out there so the sponsor knows to choose you. And of course, the first critical thing is to go above and beyond to outperform the requirements of your job description and role. Don't even think about looking for sponsorship if you're not already kicking butt. So really think about performance first. And don't just work hard and be the best kept secret in the organization. You do need to find ways to showcase that and self-promote it and make your value visible. And also take some time to observe the office culture around you and the protocols that relate to sponsorship and how it works in your organization. Maybe ask around who's had a sponsor, how did that happen, how did it work? And also, as I mentioned on the previous slide, really ask around and look out for those leaders who have a strong track record of developing talent around them. Those are your ideal sponsors to seek out. So you want to network widely, upward and outward, beyond your own direct management chain throughout your organization, and make yourself known to others. Take it upon yourself to introduce yourself to people, or when you take on perhaps a stretch assignment, see if you can get one working for a leader that you haven't had exposure to before. But you've got to expand your network beyond your direct chain. And of course, look for those exposure opportunities to work directly for or with leaders so they could see you in action and really get the value of you and the work that you do. Now, you'll see number 7 is have clarity about your career goals. And this one's really important. I have a quick story about that. I was coaching a woman who had taken a step down in her career. So she had led a really large organization and taken a job as an individual contributor to get a foot in the door with a company that she really wanted to work for. But 9 months into the job, of course, as you would guess, she was feeling bored and underutilized and ready to step back into a role where she was leading teams and leading people. So she was really clear about her career goal. But I asked her, well, do your leaders know? Do they know what your goals are? And she drew a blank. So for the rest of that coaching call with her, she just practiced and practiced what she would say. And I gave her a goal to share her career goal with 5 leaders in the next 2 weeks. So she practiced and practiced and was a little nervous, but we put the phone down and she agreed to take on that action. Now, just about 15 minutes later, one of her senior leaders stopped by her desk to check in on progress with a project. And when the conversation was done, he turned to leave and she said, oh wait, there's one more thing. And as you could guess, she was really nervous and she felt, her heart beating, and she felt a little choked up in her throat. But she said, I'd like to let you know that, I feel like I'm almost ready to take on a bigger role. And what I one day like to do is be, and she named her career goal. And he didn't really seem to react. He just kind of nodded and went on his way. But less than 30 minutes later, he came back and he said, I think I have an opportunity for you. So notice in that moment, a few things happened. Number 1, she shared her goals with her leaders. Number 2, she found a sponsor that she didn't even know was there. This person was just ready and willing to help her on her way because he believed in her. And thirdly, of course, she got exactly what she was looking for because she cared to ask for it. So have clarity about those goals and share those goals with leaders, and you'll be amazed how sponsors come out of the woodwork. So with that, I know we've been counting down from number 5, which is know your ideal career niche. Number 4, which is create that scalable brand. Boy, how am I doing on my list here? I've almost lost track. I know that a stretch assignments. And number 2 was lining up your sponsors. Now, are you ready for the number 1 step to really take charge of your career advancement trajectory? Can you feel the drama and anticipation? Oh, and I'm really sorry. I just looked at the clock. That's all we had time for. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. The number 1 thing you can do to take charge of your career trajectory and take ownership of your career and be in the driver's seat with your career advancement is to build a supportive community around you. So what does that mean? Well, we can go back to that previous piece about engaging sponsors. Why not reach out to those leaders around you who believe in you and know the value of the work that you do, and share your career goals with them. Engage their support. Ask if they know of opportunities and if they could help. And build yourself a cadre of mentors also who are slightly different than sponsors. Sponsors will help you move up, while mentors help you skill up. So have some mentors there in your corner too who are helping you build the skills to get to that next level. And be engaged in your women's network and out in your professional community as well. Build that peer group of support of other women and men who are engaged in the same type of career advancement that you're looking to, and support them, and know that when you pay it forward, it almost always comes back around as well. So build that supportive community around you And I know that the Global Tech Women organization is a terrific community of support as well. So that's my number one piece here. There's no additional steps or action to take. Just do what you're doing today and reach out and connect and be a part of the supportive community of women who are engaged in their career advancement. So here we have those 5 elements again. Know your niche, build that scalable brand, turn down the stretch assignments that don't build your brand and advance you in your career in a very visible way. Of course, line up those sponsors who are there to advocate for your advancement, and finally build a community of support around you of others who are engaged in exactly the same type of career development. So with that, I would just really encourage you to look back over the list and maybe pick 1 or 2 that you need to work on most right now. And on the next slide, I'm going to give you a place to download the PowerPoint. Oh, look at that. I thought I had the text editing just right, but apparently not. So you can go ahead and save a copy of the PowerPoint to take with you and refer back to. It's at my website, womensleadershipcoaching.com/GTW. Global Tech Women. womensleadershipcoaching.com/GTW. And if you'd like to stay in touch, I'd love to do that too. There's a link there to subscribe to my newsletter and get articles and updates and hear about future workshops, etc. So I'll just scroll back to the list here so you can think about what's in your plan. But feel free to open up the chat bar and send me a note about what action you're going to take to move forward with your own career advancement plan as you take charge of your career path going forward. And we're going to move into question time now as ready. And I've seen a few come through. But now is a great time to queue up your questions, type those into the chat bar, and we'll just jump in and take those as they come in.
So Joe, yeah, hi. That was really great, and thank you so much for going through these. I was, sitting on the edge of my seat waiting for number 1, and I agree with you. Building community support is crucial to the success of women, and we have such a great organization who can help you connect with other women in the region and around the world to support you in your goals. So thank you so much for that. I did notice that there's a couple of questions that were they're kind of intertwined, and it may not be obvious to everyone right away, but finding those sponsors, both number 1, when the sponsor isn't in your direct line because you have maybe a supervisor or a boss who isn't very supportive of your growth, is a common issue I've seen for technical women, but also there's a lot of technical women who do freelance work, and so their chain also is not a clear path. So obviously the community aspect is very important for both of these women, but do you have some other suggestions while we're waiting for people to ask further questions?
Yeah, many years ago, I was talking to my best friend, and she was complaining that there was no great men to date in the city that we lived. And I said, well, maybe the love of your life is already in your address book. And wouldn't you know it, she looked up and found the name of a guy she had never spoken to in years, and they're now married and have a family, which sounds like it's completely off topic. But maybe your ideal sponsors are already in your professional network. It's perhaps someone you worked for in the past, or someone who you met and had a great connection with at a conference. Maybe you sat next to someone, exchanged cards, and always meant to follow up. So that ideal sponsor, and I think a lot of mentors are probably already there in your network. You don't need to reach out and find them for the first time, but you do need to reach out and reconnect. And I would really recommend, just taking some time to go back over, think through, who's in your outlook, and who have you worked with that you've really enjoyed working side by side with, and take time to reach out to them and remind them how much you enjoyed working with them at the time, and see if they might be interested in just scheduling, a 20 or a 30-minute call to catch up and say, look, I'd love to hear what you're working on, and see if there's any way that we can support each other. So that's probably the easiest way. It's to reignite a previous relationship that could potentially turn into a sponsorship. And I think that really works across boundaries of either being self-employed or a freelancer, contractor, or working inside a large corporation.
Great tips. And one thing that I do as well is, I'm on LinkedIn, and what I try to do is I try to pick someone at random that I'm already connected to, and I try to reach out to one each day. And it's amazing how serendipitous that is. And so maybe, it's somebody that you haven't seen for a while or you haven't caught up with for a while. So, for example, last week I had lunch with a gentleman, and I believe he's on the webinar right now, that I hadn't seen in 11 years. And he's, getting ready to start his own gig, and he's really interested in what I'm doing, and it's created a whole new line of potential connections to help global tech women move forward. So, leave it up to serendipity as well sometimes. Reach out to those that you haven't seen in a while, and you'd be amazed at what happens.
Right. Deanna, I saw a question come in from Marta. I might jump in and address this one because I think it's a really good one. Marta asked, she said, I'd be interested in how to say no to stretch assignments because it's not always a politically wise thing to do. And Marta, I think the first thing to do is to really thank the person and say how honored you are that they chose you, that they asked. And then say, if I may, may I make a suggestion? And here's where being a great networker can really help. Think of a person that you know who is just ideal for this role, who is the perfect fit. Someone who perhaps is an up-and-comer on the team for whom this assignment could be the perfect next step up in their development, because then you're not only assisting this person who has the project open to get the job done, but you're helping someone else in their career, and you're also, building some skill capacity around you, in your sphere, in your organization. So that's certainly one. And another is, and it's not always diplomatic or okay to do that. So I really recommend, seeing every offer of a stretch assignment as a negotiation and say, look, I'm really interested. Do you mind if we explore what this could look like in the longer term? And say, I'd be happy to help out in this instance, but I'm really looking for, and name the top 3 things that you're looking at. And ask, if I help you out with this, I'll do my best, I'll do everything I can to help you be successful. Would you in return be willing to help me get X, Y, Z in my next opportunity? So enter into it as a negotiation. Deanna, do you see any other good questions coming in?
I did see one. Hold on.
Yeah, sorry, we're having to watch the
My computer is not a big fan of this chat bar here.
It's a little small.
Here's a really good one. Where did it go? It just popped off the minute I said that. So, approaching a sponsor to be a sponsor, what are some of the ways that you can go about getting face time with a potential sponsor, kind of doing the interview, making sure that they're the right fit for you, that they are, somebody who's going to help you reach, those goals you're trying to accomplish in your brand and in your career.
Very interesting. The process you described is actually the ideal set of steps to take, but to get a mentor, not a sponsor. And remember I said earlier, a mentor helps you skill up, but a sponsor helps you move up. And so really, as I mentioned earlier, as those 2 very level women really shared with me, you don't always choose a sponsor chooses you. But engaging them as a mentor is a really terrific first step. So set up, the informational interview, share with them that they are someone that you really admire, and take 3 great career questions along. And I can promise you'll have a really good conversation, if you have 20 or 30 minutes. So ask them, a question that relates to their career, like how did you get to where you are today? Ask them a skills-based question, so share with them a skill that you're working on and ask for some tips for improvement. And then perhaps say, share your goal. I'm looking at one day becoming X, what tips do you have? And boom, you've had a really robust conversation. Now, you don't just want to come out and ask someone to be your sponsor just like that. It's a little like going on a first date with someone and asking for their hand in marriage. It's too soon. You may scare them right away. But rather warm it up as a mentoring relationship. And you'll notice when it starts to turn a corner, when they really see the value in you, when they start to take you under their wing, share opportunities with you, and all you need to do at that point is make sure that they're incredibly clear about what you want to do next in your career. So you got to just let it evolve.
So to dovetail with that, there was a couple of questions about the comment you made about professional women being over-mentored and not able to reach that sponsorship stage. So what do you see as ways that you know that you're being over-mentored and not getting to that sponsorship level?
Wow, how do you know? That's a good one. I need to think on that for a moment. Deanna, do you have any tips on how can someone know they're over-mentored yet under-sponsored? All right, while you think, I just came up with one. You know, if you're always getting lateral assignments, like the next project and role and opportunity is always a lateral move, and there's all this skill development in it for you, but you never get to move up, you're probably being mentored to death, because sponsorship is about pulling you up to the next level. So if your name isn't coming up in those closed rooms for those next level assignments, clearly you're lacking in sponsors.
You know, I was going to add to that, Joe, something that I see when working, with executive women, very high-level women, they're constantly being told to delegate, to clear the deck so that they can focus on being more strategic and more of a leader in an organization. So what I find is when you start seeing things are being delegated to you versus being, conscious of, this is really part of a trajectory that you're trying to go, that's a sign that your brand is becoming more of I kick butt and get things done versus somebody who's really looking out for making sure that you're on a trajectory to reach the goals you're trying to accomplish. So you need to be careful of that. It's something that leaders are being pushed to do in their coaching and in their own mentoring, but you want to make sure that you're getting the assignments that are going to help you, and having a wide network to be able to hand people off or hand projects off to other people who might benefit from that task is great.
Yeah, that's awesome. Good.
I like this last question. How do you maintain credibility if you pivot to a different brand or a different focus than your current one, which just happens? You were mentioning, when you're entry level, you have different branding opportunities than when you're mid-level, when you go beyond that. So how do you pivot on those things?
Yeah, that's great. I'll actually pull the earlier slide up, because it's all about the top two on the list, knowing your niche and building a scalable brand, because there may be a time in your career when you're like, this brand I'm known for just is not working for me. I wanted to be this great project leader, and it turns out, what I'm really great at is completely other things. So how do I reboot my brand, so to speak? Now, of course, the first idea that usually comes to mind is, I need to quit and go and start afresh, and that certainly will do it. You can walk in the door on the first day with an entirely new brand. In fact, I remember when I went from elementary school to middle school, I decided I was no longer going to be known as Joanne. From this point forward, everyone had to call me Joe. And I was successful because I went to a whole new school. That's certainly one way to rebrand. But look, I've seen women completely rebrand themselves in a very positive way, even overcome very detrimental career missteps that really harm their reputation. And I've seen them do it very effectively in as little as 2 months. But here's what you have to do. You have to be crystal clear on what the new brand is and what you want to be known for, what your value is, and articulate that. And just rock it with your skills. So you want to be crystal clear about the brand and communicate it at every opportunity. Don't let yourself go off brand. So in all of your words and actions, be very focused on conveying the brand that you want to be known for. Now, it's a lot of work, and it takes a lot of focus and effort, but I've seen women completely rebrand themselves in as little as 2 months. So it can be done. And I've seen them bounce back from what could have been very career-harming missteps and brand themselves in a positive light. It just takes that focus.
Okay. I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up. We're over 1 hour time frame, and I want to respect everyone's time. I want to thank you again for participating in today's Women Talk Tech webinar with Joe Miller on finding your career trajectory. I learned a lot, and I intend to use a number of things that pieces of advice that Joe has given, as well as the people who attended. So thank you so much. We'll be looking for you on Twitter and on Facebook. So if you have any comments about today, if you want to share your brand, please put them up, and we'd love to read them and comment on them and share them with each other. So with that, thank you, Joe. It's an honor, as usual, to have you here, and I hope that we can do this again soon.
Thanks. Me too. Me too. Thanks, Deanna, for the invitation. Thanks, everyone, for participating.
All right. Goodbye, everybody.